I would like to see an introduction on the ban of disposable plastic bags, straws and cutlery to reduce the volume of plastic entering our environment. And so I'd like to know, have we really done, has the council done enough to promote sustainability and protecting the environment in this regard?
So quick answers on that.
I'll just say that the Greens have a bill before State Parliament currently to ban wasteful plastic packaging and single-use plastics, and we've been very actively campaigning on that issue. Nina Springle, who's our State Greens MP, came and did a beach clean with us last week. There's certainly more that Council could be doing in this space. Other things to consider are potentially that have worked in other areas of container deposit schemes and so on, so there's certainly more we could do. It's a vital issue for us with the bag. Yeah.
Do you want to add anything, Richard?
Yeah, I'd strongly support a container deposit scheme if we have the power to. I have to admit, I don't know whether we have to.
What, just for the city of Port Phillip?
Yes, absolutely.
Coca-Cola will stop it.
So you're saying you don't have the power to do that?
We don't have the power to do that.
No.
And the other thing is, when I was on council, we introduced a plastic bag ban in Elwood, in Ormond Road, and in South Melbourne Market, and it fell to bits because of
Shoppers.
failure to get support from state government.
There's a question here from the floor. Would you like to ask?
Thanks. Council's rate of diverting waste from landfills is about 35%. It's 10% below the average for similar councils in the inner parts of Melbourne, and they've set a target of 80% by 2020, and they're at 35 at the moment. What can be done?
Okay. My policy is to introduce an opt-in green bin system like Yarra has, which would really aid in a diversion of waste. Remember, we have gone backwards in 10 years on diversion of waste. We used to be at 36, we're now down to 35. This is really important because waste that is not diverted but goes to landfill decomposes in an anaerobic environment and produces methane, which is 26 times more of a global warming potential than CO2. So this is a critical carbon climate change issue, and whilst there's been a lot of grand gesturing and patting on the back of environmental best practice, on waste it's been a debacle.
How many years do you reckon, Dick, have people in the city of Port Phillip asked for green waste?
Well, that's why I'm trying to be elected.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I remember doing community consultations, and every time people would bring up a request for green waste, but council always had a comeback about it was too expensive.
Yeah,
but I know I fill my bin with my green waste.
If it's an opt-in system a la Yarra, I think it's affordable. And going back to Richard's point about, rates have gone up 30% over 5 years, his point, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, is that where are the new services? So now we've got to be providing services, and we've got a benchmark of an inner urban council that can make it affordable.
Simon Strickland, you'd like to ask a question on that topic?
Yes. So we're talking about rates here just briefly, and I walked around Middle Park and Albert Park, so I'm standing for council, and the thing that's striking is that we are that far away from a rate revolt. There are little old ladies who are saying, I'm not going to pay my rates. I've actually had a conversation with two very nice ladies who are about 35, 40, children go to school. They're so furious about the rate rise they got this year when it was supposed to be capped at 2.5%. So, lots of the people there were claiming that they had rate rise up to 30%. So somebody somewhere got a rate decrease because it was capped at 2.5%.
Flats and apartments.
Yep.
So, flats and apartments. So whereabouts are those flats and apartments? I own a flat in Port Melbourne, and I got an 18% rate rise on that. So whereabouts are these flats and apartments?
I don't know. I haven't been on council for 8 years. Please don't blame me.
I'm not blaming you. I was hoping that Bernadine would be here so we could ask her the question.
So what's your question?
So the question is, given that somebody got a rate decrease and everybody else got a huge rate rise, is that equitable? And can we do something about that changing all the time, increasing rates in Middle Park and Albert Park?
Rates are based on land value, so it's not going to be just a one rate for all. That's not equitable. But I think your points that you started making about how shocked people were,
Yes.
including
Angry.
myself, yeah, and angry, I think goes to the issue of a really lack of transparent communication. Everyone knew that the state government had capped rates. Everyone thought that meant certain things, which it doesn't mean. And the lack of honesty in communicating that information, I think, is really appalling. And, my rates have gone up $1,000 a year every year for as long as I can remember. I certainly am not seeing an increase in services.
So let me just ask you one more question since you were on there. So,
No. Never been elected
okay,
to council.
so we're currently using annual value as the rate determining step. The legislation says we should be giving you the opportunity to use 3 different types, but on only one of them, which is the capital equivalent value, capitalised improved value, do you have the opportunity to make a differential rate across the different classes of property? Why has the council stuck with annual value, which locks them into a single rate across everywhere?
I can't answer that. I don't know the argument behind that. They never espouse it in any of the documents. I've looked at them pretty carefully.
But hang on, it's not a single rate everywhere.
Yes, it is. Sorry, it is, Jennifer.
Is
It's
it?
a standard rate across the city. It depends on the value. There are no differences. There's one rate struck. What they're doing is actually they're being naughty with the rates. They just decide what revenue they want, right? And then the values change. Every 2 years, values are reviewed. I think it's a really corrupt system because the councils actually do the rate assessments. You know,
Right.
they do the value assessments. The valuer general does. He ticks them off. Really, let's be frank. He just ticks them off. So, but this year they didn't increase rates by 2.5, which the gross rates. They didn't increase them by 2.5. They increased them by 3.7 because they've come up with this sort of tricky little thing called growth factor. It's called 1.2. Oh, the city's going to grow by 1.2. We're going to look after these extra people. Well, hang on. They're doubling up because those extra people are coming into new apartments. No new single houses are being built, very few. So they're actually doubling up, in my view, on that 1.2.
I'm going to come to Oggy on this point. Oggy, would you
Yeah,
like to-
thank you, Andrew. I agree with Jen's point earlier that it's about transparency and people feeling like they've got a say in how their rates are being used. One of the ideas I'd like to introduce and perhaps have some feedback on is the idea of participatory budgeting. It's something that's been used by the Melbourne City Council in the past, and it's participatory budgeting is a democratic process in which the community members directly decide how to spend part of the public budget. I think it would help create a sense of inclusion, increase transparency, and make people really understand where the rates are going. Port Phillip Council, there's so many services that it provides. People should have a say in what those services are and how they're funded, and be part of the delivery process.
Oggy, I want to go yes, except. And the big but for me is that we know not everyone will participate in those sorts
But
of
not
processes.
everybody has to participate.
No,
you can
I
pick
know.
a panel of up to 38 people, for example, which is mixed of residents and also traders, for example. So it can be a select. Not everybody needs to participate, but
Look, it's complex, and it's
while,
not.
while you're
it's-
answering
yeah.
that, Michael Carman here? He's gone, has he? Okay.
I was going to say there are really simple tools that you can use to help educate people about, well, if you want to spend more there, this is what the impact it's going to have in the budget. And I would really love to see council at least start there, because they are simple computer-based tools where people can say, because everyone always wants more of everything that caters for their self-interests. But we need to help people understand that when we increase spending over here, there is an impact somewhere else in the budget.
absolutely. What about then the idea of advisory committees? When I first came to Australia when I was 11 years old, I was involved for 6 years as part of the Youth Advisory Committee with the council where I lived at the time, which gave me an opportunity to have direct contact with councillors and have input into the services and programs that are built by the council for young people. I mean, there's another way that the community can be involved and something that Port Phillip Council doesn't really seem to be taking on currently.
Now, what we're going to do is we're going for about 7 more minutes. That will round it out to an hour and a half by my calculation, because we started at 7:45. So if there's anyone else who'd like to ask a question, please come up to the microphone. You're very welcome. And we've got time for perhaps two more questions.
A moment ago, mention was made of Albert Park, and what's been taking place in Albert Park is a crime. Was the public's had the park stolen from them. It's supposed to be a park, it's a playground. And it's not that, it's a commercialised space that has been degraded by a car race, by a commercial golf driving course, by another golf course, even while the population around Albert Park has doubled. And this great need of open green space. It's not there, and it doesn't look like being there. But let me give you two other sort of examples of a crime taking place in this community in a nearby area. Kidani Garden. 14 days this summer, the Kidani Gardens are going to be closed with ugly fencing and various other bits of paraphernalia for pseudo-commercial events. That will be a burden on the local community because they will not have access to the park, particularly on a Saturday and Sunday, and it will be a burden on all the visitors who should have access to that particular park. There's a second key park here in St Kilda, South Beach Reserve. That also will be locked up for several days, and both parks will be further locked up for half days, amounting to about 14 days in all. So Kidani Garden locked up for almost a month this particular summer. And the other South Beach Reserve, similarly. On top of it, there will also be, the marvellous St Kilda Festival.
Your point is that this is unacceptable?
No, well, I'll get to the point. Okay, South Beach Reserve has similarly been maligned. On top of it, we've got a cinema that's going to occupy a major part of the lawn area that is the other precious open space here immediately in St Kilda. And therefore, their 2-hour booze up every night showing minor films, they're going to occupy a major part of the park for 5 weeks. Why in the world is that allowed?
Okay,
we're talking of public space. This is not space to be privatised by a private developer.
Let's put the question to the panel.
What is the panel going to do about it? Or are you going to be further promotional?
Okay, good question.
I feel very strongly about this issue too.
Would you like to come to the mic?
Okay. I would just like to add something else from my own point of view. I am a great user of parks, very essential to my health and well-being. Also very essential to my health and well-being is my residential amenity. I've always fought for that, and I've always thought that that is one of the most fundamental things that any council or councillor should take in consideration when they take on such an important position as being a councillor, as a representative of us. Sorry, I'll get emotional because I am very, very concerned about the privatisation of public parks, and I do believe that they do belong in essence to the residents.
So which park is near to your place?
Kidani Gardens and the South Beach Reserve. I have a walking disability. I can just get to Kidani Gardens and I can just get to South Park with a few stops in between.
Shall we ask the panel to respond then to those questions?
I just would like to know whether the fact that the use of these parks for private 2-day events, 1-day events, 10 hours at a time, very loud events which are extremely disturbing. And I think to coin a phrase, I think a lot of people are getting event exhaustion.
Okay.
And I just wonder what the future for events and whether residents do need to move out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to respond? Catherine?
Well, I've had a few queries of like this from residents during the campaign, and it's obviously a really hot topic. We're very lucky in the city of Port Phillip that it's a beautiful area that a lot of people want to come and visit, and some of these places provide ideal grounds for hosting a large event. I guess what needs to be borne in mind is when requests like this are made from council, there is heaps of scope for us to set conditions and consider whether there is a way to preserve public access to public land as well. So I think it's very case by case. You've raised a number of different events, but certainly the Greens have a really strong record of advocating for public access to public space. A really good example of a win on this recently is we have the Deputy Mayor of Glen Ira, Thomas Souness, who has been working with Sue Pennicu, who's our state MP, to improve public access to the Caulfield Racecourse. There's a park in there that is supposed to be available for public use. So I think that's a really good example of how we can actually get some progress on these issues. And I guess I'll just echo that you've been heard tonight, and I've heard similar things from residents, and we know it's a concern.
Well, we've got time for one more question. Would you like to make a comment on that?
Look, I just wanted to say that I absolutely share your concerns. However, there is strong voices in the community who don't see it the way we see it, who value live music coming in. And, you know, I, as a local resident who living very close to Catani Gardens, I do believe we are having too many events. They've pushed it too far.
Okay, now I think we have two questions, yeah? So if everyone's okay, we'll go with those two questions, please.
Hi, I'm a local resident and a local business as well. And one of the preoccupations that I have with council is that I was part of a consulting group or a consultation group with council, which somehow I happened to be removed from it. And someone within council allowed me the luxuries of letting me know that I'm too outspoken. So I asked too many hard questions. So my question is...
That's a bit scary introduction.
Well...
It's a lot to live up to, actually.
Unfortunately, it's one of those things that I think a lot of the residents and local businesses get put into that hard basket if they're quite adamant in questions that they ask. So this is a question for council or those that are looking to move into council. What council says they have consulted with industry and locals on particular issues and topics. Why is that when council is asked who they actually consulted with, they clam up? As a local resident and as a local business, I actually want to know who you consulted with. So is there going to be more transparency?
I have a view on that. I think the consultation process that the council's been engaged in, as I've watched it closely over the last 4 years, has become corrupted, basically. I think we've got experts come in. It keeps the councillors distant from the people. Some of them, like I know in Port Melbourne, it was a consultation about the front, the front area around Station Pier. They flew consultants in from Sydney for that. It was just extraordinary. And I think if you watch the council meetings, it's become a crutch. The councillors say, "Oh, has there been community consultation on that?"
Oh, yes,
say the officers, and they go tick.
And I'm glad that you just said that, because the real question is, it's not so much with council, but it's with who you call officers. Unfortunately, we call them public servants. And I think that they forget that they are actually public servants and not officers of a department. So the corrupt factor is quite knowledgeable within our society. So I suppose the second part of that question is, what is council going to do about keeping that contained, or how are they going to dilute that corrupt element within the departments?
It really depends on councillors. The councillors have got to get out and about in the community and really get that interface, because if they don't do that, they have these middlemen, and that's not right. I just don't think...
No, they have to demand more transparent reporting on the processes. Who have been consulted, when, how, what, and, what questions were asked.
We have asked those questions and we don't get a response.
And that's inexcusable.
Thank you.
Okay. Last question here.
Can I just say, Jen, you organise for the City of Port Phillip probably one of the biggest consultation processes in the country. How many went to that consultation?
Oh, 750.
So 750 Port Phillip residents and traders were dragged into MSAC. It was huge.
Were invited.
Were invited. No, but it was...
No, they were invited.
I mean, the point is... look, I haven't been on council for 8 years, but I would say a few things. Consultation is very difficult because it's difficult to know when you're being manipulated because there's a small group of people inside the council bubble and really because of the fires of democracy do not burn brightly at local government level. So it is often dominated by elites of the left and elites of the right. So how do you get beyond the elites is very difficult. So, and there's been so many different models of consultation, from the 750 to the
The model and the process is immaterial. It is the transparency, the openness and the honesty. Politics, unfortunately, always overrides the consultations. And until you can shift that, and that requires cultural change by everyone, not just the elected officials.
Do you feel that 750 was a complete corrupted waste of time?
Not at the time, I didn't. It was probably the most deliberative process I have ever helped organise.
And the model that Oggie's alluding to.
Yeah, is part of that sort of stuff. Where people actually, we made sure that people were more knowledgeable about issues we were asking their opinions of, and that they had to listen to people who didn't agree with them. And that's a very difficult thing to achieve, but with good processes you can do it. However, what happened after that very large process, which was to develop a City of Port Phillip community plan, A, broke my heart, but B, also has really destroyed my faith that you can do this stuff effectively and properly and truly democratically, because that was meant to represent, it was a 10-year plan representing different voices in the community coming together around agreed objectives moving forward. A new council came in and they said that plan belongs to the last council, and they threw it out. That cost a lot of money, that process. It cost the council more than 200 grand, and that didn't count staff time. And it was exemplary. And the new council said, no, we're not having a bar of it.
Okay, let's go to the last question. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
There is a ding-ding.
I'm Anne Boyd from the St Kilda Live Music community. I'm a punter who just wants to enjoy live music. I have a question about Council's lack of support for live music venues since the last election, but I first need to outline this issue for a minute or so. Venues have been over-targeted by council noise limit compliance officers, and if the noise levels are over some phantom limit, the venue is fined without consultation. Unrealistic curfews for historic entertainment precincts have been placed, example 8 p.m, 10 p.m. on a weekend. I am particularly angered, along with hundreds of others, by the closure of Pure Pop. It was a beloved music community, small venue where local to international acts played, and hundreds of residents made many friends and music connections and enjoyed great live music. However, Council took the viewpoint of one vexatious complainant. He even complained about a date the venue wasn't open and closed the performance space until $150,000 of soundproofing works were carried out. The current council has been very unsupportive of live music venues, and I would like to ask the candidates standing, if elected, will you advocate for consultation with and more positive support for live music venues in the City of Port Phillip, including meetings with the St Kilda Live Music community?
Thank you very much. Well, we know Nick is very supportive.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. What Anne actually did mention there, I actually wanted to mention with that last thing about transparency and council officers who seem to be a law unto themselves. I know of 3 venues who received fines in the mail for being too loud. How does that help anyone, for God's sake? I mean, they don't know which night it was, they don't know how loud they were, they don't know who made the complaint. What's to stop another venue complaining about another venue and saying, oh, they're too loud? Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. And this council's officers have gotten away with far too much, far too bloody long, and they should be held accountable.
That's why
Okay. So quickly, a response to that.
There's been a complete loss of common sense. Pure Pop was a complete loss of common sense.
Absolutely.
The closure of the bookshop by once again one complainant who was like, and then my physio, he wanted to he got a new venue for yoga and Pilates.
Well, they're very noisy.
And yoga, and he had to spend $3,000 on a noise study and had his venue closed for 2 months.
And you get one person that's done this, and they're
I mean, the guy, the noise consultant just laughed and said, here's the $3,000 bill, and yes, it's fine.
Are you sympathetic to these arguments, Catherine?
I'm a muso as well, so absolutely, it's one of the most vibrant parts of what makes our suburbs special.
It's why a lot of people live in Port Phillip.
Yep, absolutely, and I think that there some of the issues you're raising. There's still a lot of confusion in the general population about how the agent of change principle operates and the rights of venues. It's really distressing to hear that there have been unclear enforcement practices. I'd be very interested in meeting with and talking to the live music community.
Richard?
Absolutely.
Yeah, look, it's not such a big issue at my end of town.
Because you're old and bushy.
Yeah, that's right. Look, obviously...
There's a couple of venues in South Melbourne.
Oh, I don't
know
that.
Yeah, the Water Rat. The Water Rat was...
You waiting for Johnny O'Keefe to tour.
Oh, that's right, exactly, something like that.
Yeah.
Look, no, I think... I agree with the fundamental premise. I think this council has become incredibly bureaucratic. Really bureaucratic. It's nonsensical. I get that constantly from people. It's impractical. The officers come and they make the simplest thing complex for everybody.
Ben, are you sympathetic to what you're hearing?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the ex-group general manager for a hospitality business that had half a dozen late licensed venues that played live music and not live music, but live music into the late in the night. And on the receiving end of vexatious complainants as well. So completely sympathetic and being coming to St Kilda.
But residents' amenity is an issue that has to be factored in. It's not just one way.
Yes, but
sure.
one vexatious complainant isn't.
And it's got to stop being anonymous too. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is
absolutely ridiculous.
And you're talking about, I mean, we're the residents. It was a community in every sense of the word. There were people from all over the world who knew about Pure Pop.
Can I just mention something that's incredibly funny, if not sad? And Anne actually touched on it. Pure Pop had complaint after complaint after complaint about gigs. The guy who was complaining would go to the gig guide and work it, and one week, 3 gigs in a row were cancelled, and he complained about those 3 gigs to council, and they looked into it.
The venue...
They didn't happen.
The venue wasn't open.
The venue wasn't even open.
Yeah, well, you're spoiled for choice on who to vote for here because
the idea that you
it.
can complain anonymously
is
it's quite a surprise.
I know for a fact, and I won't mention names, I know other venues are dobbing other venues in to make their business bad.
All right,
I won't mention names.
You've all raised an incredibly important issue.
Amy, I'll tell you.
Ticket torture.
So the others standing would support...
Well, I think everyone standing here has answered your question in the affirmative, so you've got a good response, Anne. We're going to call it quits there if you don't mind. Well, I'll take the view of the floor. Are you happy to take one more question? One more, come on.
She looks honest.
You know,
Please, make it quick.
I'm a resident, but I'm also the precinct manager for the Fitzroy Street Business Association. So my interest is we are in a dire place. We need some support. We have shops that are empty, and part of that is about generational owners who are very greedy. I'd like to see the London model instituted. If you don't use it, you lose it, and you are fined very heavily. How do you feel about that?
Hear, 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 hear. Nice point.
That would come down to a differential rate scheme, and it has been done in Nillumbik on a different basis. That was on undeveloped land, so it's easy to say there's not a building there. But
I'm talking
But
about
local
developed
government-
land.
we're talking about developed land, so it might be difficult, but I've been asked this question in relation to residential, and I've said, I don't know whether it can be done, but I'm really committed to looking into it.
Part of my feeling is if the council has the will, they can do this.
Yeah.
If London can do it, we can do it. Why can't we?
Richard, do you have a response?
Yeah, look,
What do you think? I'm really interested to see what you think.
I would love it, but I don't think that that local government has the legal capacity to do it. But absolutely, when you see so many shops just left empty, it's not just Fitzroy Street.
No, I
it's
know.
Carlisle Street as well.
It's any place where there are generational owners and they are making equity and they are making their developments and they don't care if it's empty.
They don't have enough economic pressure on them to be realistic.
No,
about
because
it.
they own multiple of them, and
Savoy
they're happy to
Tavern in Melbourne was empty for 25 years. The City of Melbourne said, if you don't develop this, we're going to fine you. They fined them so heavily, finally they went, yes, we have to open this again.
So Melbourne-
if the
Melbourne
City of
started.
Melbourne
If the
can
City
do
of
it, we can do it, can't we?
The City of Melbourne does have some different powers, but it's definitely, I mean, apart from anything else, there's no reason that local government can't be pushing state government to be able to get that power.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd say
Thank you
also,
very
I like what
much.
Richard was saying before about offering subsidised rents to various businesses
Yeah.
to attract different businesses
Yeah.
into
Well,
it.
I think I'm talking about a different thing. I'm talking
Yeah, we'll
about
get- we'll also
landowners
get
that are
people in
very
there.
greedy,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and I want to see them come to the party.
Yeah.
And if we have to find them to come
Yeah.
to the party,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that this council has got to do so much better in small business.
I
The
agree.
epitome of it, to me, is the A-frame. It costs
The what?
$314 for
Oh, no.
for a trader to have that in the street. You know what it costs in Yarra? $84.50.
Look, I could talk about footpath fees, I could talk about parking, and all of these things that this council seems to arbitrarily, put prices on. And I would like to see a bit more equity for St Kilda,
Yeah.
for Fitzroy Street and Ackland Street. We're not seeing it. We're a cash cow for the council. So
I think we have to
We're gonna wrap
do
it up
a
now.
moratorium on some of those cash things for cash cow attributes for Fitzroy Street to give it that kick in the
do you
bottom.
agree that it's
Yeah.
that?
Look, it's my job really to wrap this up because we do have to end at some point. Thank you very much. Please thank our panel, Dick Gross, Catherine Copsey, Jennifer Stone and Richard Roberts. And our front bench, as we're calling it, Dr John Spearings, Jenna Bolitho, Oggy Simic, Ben Schultz and Nick Hayes. Thank you all very much. I should say Bernadine Voss was called away today because of a family emergency. She gave her apologies that she couldn't be here. Please join me in thanking the two principal organisers of this, Simon and Tim Barnett. And thank you all very much for coming out and taking part. Thank you.